Kute.
Hey, Lilou, how are you?
Very good to connect online in this way.
Feels like a reconnection, doesn't it? We've never met in person, but here we are.
Well, I know you from YouTube. I've watched many of your videos back then. I think we started pretty much at the same time when it just got started. And now I bump into your video. I saw an amazing, blissful experience that you were having in Bali, and I saw that, and I'm like, I know this guy. And in second synchronicity, I see you in the movie The Three Magic Words. And I'm like, I know him again. I have to reconnect with him. This is the time to do a Skype interview. I'm in Kauai. You're in LA. You're all over the world. You're a teacher. You're doing such a wonderful job. Your expansion is so beautiful to have witnessed after all these years. I'm so excited. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's been an amazing lifetime, an amazing few years, and it's just a very exciting time to be alive. So for me, I'm just honored to hang out with you and just get to share some thoughts and ideas and just be alive. It's a celebration.
This is cool. Tell us about what you feel really is possible for us. Who are we as human beings? What is possible for us to get right now? How happy can we get? How juicy can it be? You've got that juice. I know it.
You're giving me like 7,000 questions in one.
I know.
Maximize the interview. It's not just like, well, where did you start from? It's like, how juicy, how happy can we be? You just go for it.
How happy, how juicy can we be? What's possible?
Ultimately, who are we? I really feel that the times we're living in right now are literally, and I've been saying a lot when I've been speaking, but I feel are in perhaps the most profound spiritual revolution that the world has ever seen. Right now, the world is waking up, and as we're in this so-called crisis and things are collapsing, all these things that we've been holding on to, these old paradigms, these old belief systems, these old, economic systems, these old ways of relating, old relationships, just all these things we've been identifying as me, as a sense of who I am, these external things, my house, my car, my job, my stock market, just these external things that we've been holding on to for a sense of who we are, for a sense of false identity. As we're being forced to let go of these things, I feel as though we're being invited. That kind of cosmic alarm clock is ringing, waking us up more and more to the true identity of who we are, as to when these things that we thought we were are taken away or we're forced to let go of them. The question is, who are we really? Mm-hmm. And I think we, more than ever, are being called to find that out, not just as a book we've read or as an intellectual idea, but to know that as a living reality, that perhaps who we are is unchanging, who we are is not transitory, is not impermanent. What we are essentially is free. Is freedom itself, is love itself, is pure consciousness itself. And I feel what's exciting is, in this spiritual quickening and evolution that's happening, we're being called to find this out right now. The possibility that the great avatars and mystics and yogis and Yogananda and all these amazing Babajis have held as that possibility of our own divinity, we are being invited to evolve into that higher realization, the new human, the new infinite being. And to me, that's where the juice is, So often we're searching for bliss outside. We're searching for, looking to avoid pain and get more pleasure. So we're running after these things in the external world, but everything in the external, as I've experienced and as we experience through experiences are constantly transitory. Nothing lasts, Food is great, but it's temporary. Yeah. A relationship is great, but it's temporary. Clothes, homes, cars, all these things where we're constantly seeking a sense of juiciness and aliveness is temporary. So you ask, what is the source of real juiciness? To me, the real source of juiciness, which, you're spreading this juicy wisdom right now, is connecting to the source of life itself. Yeah. To me, that is an infinite source of aliveness that's not dependent on anything outside. Yeah. And to me, that's the freedom. That's the aliveness when we connect to that inside. Yeah. So.
Yeah, yeah, and we can feel that, and most people would say, I can feel it, I can see it, and yet I keep on having those same experiences over and over again. I feel trapped, I feel locked in, I'm not experiencing all of that. This is for you guys, this is not for me. I was born in those circumstances and this, and I'm out of that. What would you say to people that feel in this kind of like this loop, this constant, always the same event coming back and trap?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, we've got to take responsibility. It's a simple thought, but so often we fall into this addictive pattern of, victimhood and this being disempowered and hopelessness and helplessness. And I think the first step is a basic thought. We just have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And what I found in working with a lot of, people from around the world as a coach is, a lot of the time people say they want to transform. Like, oh, I really want to transform. I really want to change. I really want to break through. But the reality is, when it comes down to it, they don't. We don't. We have all these patterns. We have all these loops. And I ask people, what do you really, really want? What do you really, really, really want more than anything else?
Yeah.
And so often we are constantly choosing suffering.
Yeah.
Constantly choosing it over and over again. And I think when we really get clear that what we want is freedom, more than anything else, more than drama, more than our addictions, more than suffering, more than, experience, when we really get clear, I think just that intention alone, just that clarity alone begins to shift something in us. It doesn't mean it's the end. There's going to be a process, but so often we're not really clear that what we want is truth more than anything else. So I think that's a beginning point that has to happen. What's interesting is the Dalai Lama said, I heard a quote from him the other day. He did an interview and he said something. They asked him, what do you wish for the Americans and the Western world more than anything else? And you know what he said? This man of compassion and love, he says, I wish the world more suffering.
Oh my God,
Can you
said
believe that? I wish the world more suffering, because sometimes, we're so addicted to suffering, and we're like addicted to this suffering thing that sometimes when we suffer enough, then we get to the point where we realize, my God, I don't need to keep suffering. It's way overrated. So it was an interesting thought.
Oh, and how do you define though freedom? Because sometimes freedom can be, I think we need to redefine. Everything is, to me, it feels like it's being redefined, because even freedom, is it to escape? At some point it can be to escape something, but here we're talking of the real freedom.
Yeah, I think real freedom is not an escape. Real freedom, because when you're caught up in escape, you're still running from something.
Yeah.
And when you're running from something, that's not freedom. You're still possessed by the fear, the emotion, the thought form, the story, whatever it is you're running from. Real freedom is when you face yourself fully, your fears, your patterns, your addictions, and you work through them, you move through them, you let go of them. But also the real freedom is, I think, when you dare to die to who you've been and move beyond the identities that you've been holding on to.
Yeah.
And you find the source of your own truth inside, the source of your own being inside. That's not determined by anything on the outside.
Yeah.
It's beyond words.
Yeah.
But it's not an escape. And sometimes we think we're free.
Yes,
we say,
exactly.
oh, I have free will. I can go wherever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I'm a free being. But we don't realize that we're conditioned, that we're running certain patterns. We're reacting, or we're rebelling. Even those that are rebels, like I'm a rebel. We're rebelling to the past. We're rebelling against our parents. We're reacting to a certain conditioning, and we're not actually as free as we think. So I think part of freedom is waking up to our conditioning and being able to move beyond that conditioning to then align with who we are, so you can actually have free and authentic choice to respond and to create a new moment to moment, and rather than doing the same 4 or 5 step pattern over and over again, thinking, this is who I am. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And rather than realizing, wow, there's a different music playing and I'm still doing the same pattern, versus realizing with some awareness, oh, maybe I don't have to keep doing that. Maybe that's actually not who I really am and what I actually believe. What is my truth? You know, and being aligned with one's truth. So.
Tell us about your moment in your own story when you were at that, what you thought freedom or wanting to break free, to really realizing your full potential. Tell us about that tipping point, because I'm sure you were a little bit rebellious growing up, or I'm sure there was part of you that really said, you know, screw this, I'm leaving. But I'm sure there's a tipping point where you really got the full magnitude of things.
You know, I don't know if there was one tipping point.
Yeah.
There were moments, but there were several things that led up to that. You know, I grew up in the church. My father's a healer, a minister, and, you know, a revered spiritual kind of guy. I was supposed to take over the whole, you know, operation and his 300 churches, and I left. And I came to America at 18, won a green card, showed up, knew no one. And my vision was I wanted to be, you know, a speaker and an author, and I went and found all these gurus and authors and teachers. And cut a long story short, Lilou, I started doing seminars and I had a radio show at a very young age, in my early 20s, you know, was just putting 200 people in the room and just thought I was the man, basically, you know. And what really happened for me was I didn't realize how conditioned I was. I didn't realize how identified with my ego I was. I didn't realize at that young age how much I was still trying to prove or overcome an inadequacy and insecurity to prove that I was good enough. And talk about freedom, I was doing some great things, but really was totally in a prison, not free at all. And you could say what really broke me through wasn't a book, wasn't a guru, wasn't a teacher, wasn't a coach, wasn't a seminar. I fell in love with a woman. And I fell profoundly, deeply, madly in love. And that was the process and the beginning of what really cracked my egoic identity open. You know, that really cracked my heart open and forced me to face things about myself that I couldn't hide behind anymore, that I couldn't intellectualize. It brought up all of my stuff. And through that relationship, I got to confront parts of myself I didn't even know existed, didn't even want to admit existed, had been running from my whole life, and actually face those parts and heal those parts and really just love all of myself. So I would say it was love that really birthed me into a deeper level of a realization of who I am. You know?
So your heart started reopening, would you say?
My heart cracked. It didn't just reopen. You know, the feminine came into my life and just cracked it open. You know, and I realized all these places in myself that I'd been avoiding hurt, avoiding pain, all these mechanisms I developed to be loved, to get approved, to, you know, to be something in the world, and all of those mechanisms that were really shells around my authentic self that I developed. You know, as children, we come in free, we're alive, and then, you know, as ways to avoid pain or get, you know, be approved of or just fit in and survive in the world, we develop all these mechanisms, masks, and strategies just to survive and function. And I thought that was me. We often think this is who I am. And then we're not, that's not freedom, that's just a prison. So when this relationship showed up and some of these ways of being that had worked well, at least helped me survive, started not working in relationship with something that, a woman that was incredibly authentic, you could say who I thought I was just started to fall apart. And it was incredibly scary and vulnerable, but I started to be invited to find something a little deeper. You know, so that was my heart cracked.
So how do you create such an experience? And I know you take people to Bali, and I saw this video that looks absolutely amazing. But how do you create such a powerful, you know, context like that? Or is that really needed to create such a context?
Is that really what?
Is it really needed to create such a context?
You know, here's what I'll say. We're living in such a conditioned world, so to speak. You know, in the West, we're bombarded with so many different distractions, the media and the magazine stands, and be like this and look like this and, drink this drink and wear this cologne and, wear this underwear and do your hairstyle this way and wear these shoes. And we're constantly being bombarded from what we see visually, but even psychically and energetically and, non-locally, just even on a unseen level, we're in an atmosphere that's very conditioned. And to me, I call it it's the gravity of the West. Just when you kind of land in the West, if you're not awake and aware, the gravity of the mass consciousness of conditioning can start pressing you into a certain shape. And it's like a swamp, so to speak. It starts pressing you in a certain shape. And I think it can be a little bit harder to wake up, in the West, so to speak. It's not impossible. So I think what I found really helped me in terms of creating the journeys was unplugging. Unplugging from the matrix. Not forever, but just so you can unplug and just kind of shed some of the layers so that you can then enter back into the world from a clear place and then be able to stay free in the world. So, my journey was, after falling in love, I basically started traveling. I questioned my entire life, and I started traveling around the world in search of answers. And I unplugged. And I went, basically what happened, I went to India. And I ended up in India, and I wanted to find the keys to happiness and joy and juiciness, so to speak. And that's where my heart cracked open outside of the everyday TikTok world. And it was out of that experience that I started to experience the profoundness of transformational travel. And traveling where you're not actually seeking to escape yourself. You're actually unplugging from your daily life, going out into a different environment so you can actually face yourself and find yourself.
To the unknown, really.
And you're going it's a hero's journey. You're going into the unknown, and you're letting go of all those places you've been holding on to as an identity so you can find out, who you really are, so to speak. So through those profound experiences I went through in India, I really wanted to create journeys and a transformational process that would really immerse people into an experience away from the regular life. So, I do this crazy process in India that's, it's a one-on-one journey, and I take a visionary one-on-one to India, take away your passport, your money, take away everything, and just unteach you, uncoach you for about 14 days. And we do that in Bali now with a group. And for me, the vision was to take leaders, because I believe leaders, as we go into this new paradigm, the world is really waiting for leaders, visionaries that aren't just run by their egos, but really connected to source, connected to the heart, connected to freedom, connected to who they really are. And I wanted to take leaders on this journey so that from their own transformation, they could go out and lead the world. So it's an immersion process, that people through. Yeah.
So you would work even with corporate leaders or governments or things like that? I mean, you really want to transform that crowd? You think it's possible because it's exciting. I mean, if that can crack open, that means...
a lot of my clients who, go on my India journey, which is that one-on-one crazy journey to India, have been very high-level entrepreneurs, CEOs, visionaries. And, what happened was I was on the back of a train in India about 10 years ago, shaved my head, had a backpack, and literally ended up on the back of a train, Lilou, and for about 7 hours was just literally weeping because I was with the poorest people in the world. And sometimes, we're so blessed, we don't realize how incredibly blessed we are just in the West to have food and running water and, just everything we have. And I was on the back of this train, and there was what was the poorest woman in the world with 5 children, and my heart broke just feeling, wow, the suffering of another slice of humanity. And then I looked into her eyes and I realized that what was looking at me was the same thing, that we are one river of humanity just flowing together, intermingling, interconnected. And I thought, my heart broke open in love. And then that's when I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if an entrepreneur or a CEO or a president were on this train having their heart cracked open? How would that impact how they led people? How would that impact how they, transform cultures and use their resources for positive and effective change?
How do you help them though to break free from the goal setting and the intention and like because all their time is very minuted and you have to
Yeah.
have a result and this and that, and I
Yeah.
guess during this experience you have to let go of everything.
See, so it's the question, how is, on this journey, I take away your passport, your money, you have a backpack, you have no idea where you're going, you have zero idea about anything other than you show up at the airport at a certain time. So already, and plus you write your will, you write letters to everyone in your life in case you don't come back, and I don't answer any questions. So already from the very beginning, we begin at surrender. So it already starts working someone's tendencies of where we're going, what are we doing, what's happening. And I already start working people from the beginning. So from the beginning, you're already having to let go. And the whole journey is a profound realization of, oh my God, I have no idea where I'm going. I'm profoundly not in control of this process. And by the end, they get to see I haven't been in control the last 2 weeks. And I've had the most intense, amazing, profound time of my life. And it's a metaphor for the realization of, we think we're in control as these separate egoic beings, but I feel there's a greater intelligence and a greater process that we aren't even living. We're being lived by this force of life. And our job is simply more than trying to make something happen or even make our reality happen. To me, everything's already existing. It's all already existing in consciousness. Our job is, if anything, to surrender as profoundly as we can to this flow, to this intelligence, because this intelligence brought us into existence. This intelligence is living us now. This intelligence, when this body is dissolved, will be continuing to function all of existence. And I think our job, if anything, is to simply surrender and let go and loosen our contractedness that where we've learned to hold on so we can allow ourselves to be fully lived by this intelligence, and if you look at Gandhi, Martin Luther King, people that are really alive, that are really juicy, they just surrendered so deeply to the stream that beyond anything they could, put on a poster board or imagine or visualize, like life took them. They plugged into infinite reality itself and life lived them in such a way their minds could never have fathomed. Could never have made up. Their minds would have limited it to, I want to help this amount of people. But, when we surrender that deeply, then the intelligence of life can function freely through us. And that's where miracles happen, That's where Jesus, miracles. That's where the miracle happens when you could say, we are not there. We're not there. And that happens, you look at great states of music. When we're listening to music and for a moment we're just gone. I think that's why people get addicted, I think, to alcohol, to drugs, because for a moment, our limited minds is just kind of loosened for a moment. Orgasm, just for a moment, we're gone. It's the small death for a moment. So I think it's that surrender. It's the loosening of ourselves to allow life to live us. And I think that's where we're going, where we realize there is an intelligence that is functioning all of existence, and it's time we start trusting it,
Yeah. Is there something that we could say at the beginning of the day or that you do? How do you live your life or start your day that we could also maybe apply in our own lives?
Yeah.
To bring that on, to reinforce that?
To me, it's pretty simple these days. I just sit. Two things I do religiously, so to speak. I exercise to just get my body moving, just kind of shake the body up a little bit, stretch, run, sweat, what have you. That's one thing. But simply, it's just kind of going into silence for a moment, kind of dropping underneath the mind and just resting in that deeper dimension of my being that is connected with everything, that place that is one with everything, and just connecting there. And for me, that just sets up the flow for everything, just then it's not like, then I'm not kind of trying to make the river happen. It feels like I'm just riding a flow. And I think that's grace,
Yeah.
So more and more for me, it's just being open to grace, just grace of each moment, grace of breathing, grace of just being alive, just like grace, just grace. So,
Would you say that the journey is one from here to down here to the heart?
Yeah, I think ultimately we need to incorporate both and a balance and an integration of them both. But I think when we're really connected to the heart, you know, even actually a lot of the ancient mystics in India talk about there's a space in a location in the heart where the soul is actually alive. You know, the Atman is actually vibrating in the heart space. So I think it's really when we can open to the heart more, you know, and connect to that, but also have the connection to the mind so the mind can really align with the heart so that they can work in, you know, integration together. I think it's important. I don't think it's either or. I think it's an and, you know. I think there's an and element. So, but so often we've either gone into one extreme or the other extreme, and I think we need both.
Yeah. And it's time to find that balance. I feel we went a little bit too far out and in both sides, and now it feels like it's the time in history where we can find that balance within ourselves, within everything around, inner, outer, you know, the whole yin yang.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
It's exciting. Yeah. Do you have one last message for us? I'm so excited. I have so many more questions, but I really want to interview you in person next time. This is just a taste, because if you're in LA, I'm in Kauai, I'm soon going to be in LA. Let's make it happen and let's do this again. But what would be your message today to wrap this up and to...
You know, for me, after reading, you know, hundreds and hundreds of books and seminars and tapes, and, you know, it really comes down to a simple thing for me. And I think humbly, you know, my question to anyone, you know, watching right now is, after you're done listening to Lilou and I today, after you're done reading, affirming, doing yoga, meditating, drinking green drinks, listening to DVD sets, doing your poster board, doing yoga, raising your kundalini, after you're done with all of that, to me, the question became for myself is, are you loving or are you not? What's the bottom line? Are you loving or are you not? Because I think that's the bottom line of all of the practices, all of the visualizations, all of anything comes down to, are you loving or are you not? And if not, why not? And I think that is the yoga that we're called to do, is the simplicity of loving. The fruit of any spiritual practice, any meditation, any practice is allowing the heart love to flow. So if there was something I would invite listeners and viewers to do is really just expand, is to love fully, is to love profoundly, is to love and give that as deeply as possible.
And so, unconditionally, yeah?
Unconditionally, you know, truly unconditionally. Can I just share a quick story?
Yes.
And wrapping up? No, I was just connected to that, and maybe this will inspire those listening, but when I was in India, I have a dear friend in India. He's like he's now 90, but I met him about 10 years ago. And he was a former disciple of Gandhi, built 300 schools in India. I mean, an amazing man. You talk about a karma yogi, an amazing man who is like a living embodiment of service, compassion, nonviolence, and love. And I met him and I went to visit his orphanage in India. And, you know, he has about 200 kids in this one orphanage, and he stays there and travels around. And I wanted to go be of service, you know, and be of service, right? You know, rub my ego a little bit. And I went to be with these kids for about 2 weeks. And I kid you not, after 2 weeks, I was so frustrated. They weren't responding. You know, these are kids that he finds off the streets living in trash heaps, so they're not socialized. They weren't responding. They weren't appreciating me. It was hell for me for 2 weeks, okay? And then he lives right by the Bodhi tree, where the Mahabodhi temple is, where the Buddha got enlightened. And after about 2 weeks, I got so frustrated. I said, Dwarkaji, his name's Dwarkaji. I said, Dwarkaji, I think I'm going to take some time out. I'm going to go to the Buddha's, you know, temple, and I'm going to meditate there by the statue of the Buddha and, you know, go be spiritual. And he looked at me with such eyes of compassion. And he said, it's great that you go meditate by the Bodhi tree and by the statue of the Buddha. It's great. This moment changed my life. And he said, just make sure that when you're meditating, your heart doesn't also turn to stone. Because right here in this simple orphanage, if you look around, there are 150, 200 living Buddhas waiting for you waiting for you to worship them.
Wow.
Right in front of you. So you can go there and it's great, but right in front of you. And I think that sometimes, you know I've been guilty. We look far and wide to save the world and give free water to everyone in the world, whereas right in front of us, you know, in our family, our children, you know, those we don't like so much, our neighbors, are opportunities for us to love and practice our spirituality, to put our spirituality into practice. And I want to invite and dare and challenge everyone to do that, because I feel if we were as committed to loving and sharing and offering our hearts, if we were as committed to that as we were to making money, working, you know, all of this other stuff, literally just the intention and the action, we would change the world. Yeah. So that's what I'd like to say for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Very, very cool. And we'll start our next conversation on that. Oh my
We'll
goodness.
Continue. To be continued.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Sounds
time.
great. Love you lots.
Living it fully.
It's been awesome. Stay juicy.